In a world where digital interactions define our daily lives, one podcast dives deep into the heart of what makes experiences genuinely memorable. Welcome to Digital Customer Experience Podcast by Kiosk. I'm Daniel Paul and I'm thrilled to bring you stories, insights, and expert opinions from the ever evolving world of digital customer experience. Whether you're a tech guru, a business leader, or just curious about the digital realm, this is the place to be. Let's dive in. Today, we have a special treat for all our listeners. Today, we are joined by someone who truly understands the heart and soul of a brand. With over 20 years in client-side marketing and an impressive 15 years steering the ship at his own customer experience consulting firm, Damian Kernahan has seen it all. Damian believes that while a brand is the promise you make, the customer experience is the promise you keep. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming the CEO of ProtoCX, a man deeply passionate about the world of customer experience, Damian Kernahan. Welcome, Damian.
Hi, Danny. How are you? Nice to be on the podcast with you.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you, Damian. It's just like, a few days ago we spoke and now we're actually on a podcast
We're
and I'm
here
so excited. Yes,
all the way across the Pacific or the Atlantic or God knows how many oceans. But yes, good to be here.
absolutely, absolutely. Damian, this is something that we always do in our podcast. We ask our guests something interesting, something funny, even before we jump into the serious questions. In our last discussion, you told me that you've lived in Barbados, close to the beach, for 6 months. Is there anything interesting or funny or something that happened that you want to share with our viewers today?
Listen, it was a fantastic time. Listen, I'd just been married, and my wife actually had the transfer. So she was working during the day, and our apartment was on the beach. Like it was literally on the beach. And so it was like 20 feet to walk into the water. And there was another gentleman there, Daniel, whose wife was doing something similar in banking. And we used to be able to walk out, and there was a shipwreck just off our beach, and we'd go swimming with turtles. And so we'd do that every second day, and the water was 30 degrees, so that's sea. And then for those in America, like we're in the high 70s, like maybe early 80s, and it was just glorious. So I look back on those times fondly, just a fabulous, fabulous time.
Swimming with the turtles in Barbados.
Uh,
One day,
one
I'll
day,
try that as
I
well.
put it down. It's a good thing to do.
Brilliant. As I said before, we are so happy to have you here because you have a long career with customer experience. And this podcast is digital customer experience. And we could not have a better guest who can talk about customer experience, especially when you're running a business and you're the CEO of a customer experience company. I want to first understand the difference between customer satisfaction and customer experience. And what are the 5 ways you can increase the customer experience in the field of telecom industry?
Yeah, great. We've worked in the telco industry. It's a fascinating space. So I think
Yeah.
people quite often aggregate these or confuse the two. And so they're quite often interchanged in terms of customer service and customer experience. And I don't think one's better or worse or bigger and smaller. It's just that they're different. And the way we see the world is this: that customer service is generally, it's a department. It actually interacts with the customers when they have a specific problem, and normally there's a support issue going on there. Customer experience is the end-to-end experience that you have as a customer of that organization. So customer service interaction might take place over a few minutes or 10 minutes, but your customer experience, that can last a lifetime, but generally it might last a year or two. And if you think about the life of a telco, that's a 2 year, let's say it's a 2 year contract, normally with phones and stuff like that. If we think about it like that world, it's about every interaction that you have along the way. So it's like, how easy was it to find information? How easy was it to set up and use my phone? How easy was it for the billing? When I had a problem, customer service, how easy was it to actually interact and get the information I needed? If I had communication that I'm getting from you, what was that experience like for me? So when you think about all the component parts, that's the end-to-end customer experience. Customer service is a very small but important part of it. And we see a lot of organizations now trying to move out from this, especially government organizations, try to move from just customer service to a much bigger sphere of customer experience, which is a big step up and requires a bit more effort and technique.
Love it. And I think it's very important to understand that, if you're a customer experience or customer service agent, You're not the whole experience that they get. You're just part of the experience that they get. So if you could go and dive in a little bit deeper here and tell, how can we increase the customer experience?
Um, I'm going to answer this by saying there's no formula. And the first
Okay.
thing, it depends on the context. It depends on the context. So every telco is different. So I mean, I could give you sort of high level things like, make sure you diagnose the problem before you prescribe what you're going to do, or treat the customer experience as a means, not an end, or set up goal specific metrics. I can give you all those things. But I think even more important than that is to go, what's the context of what's actually happening for you? And that overrides sort of 3 or 4 or even 5 things that you can do. And so the first thing I would say to any telco, and we've worked with Virgin Mobile back here in Australia, is to go, let's first understand what's most important to our customers. And so when you do that, the 5 things that you should do are going to be immediately pop out for you. And I think too often we see organizations follow they talk about best practice. But best practice might, when it applied to one organization, doesn't necessarily work for your organization, because you have different core competencies, you have different cadences, you've got different innovation skill sets, and you've got different people. And so even though there are, things like go find out what's important to your customer, then I would go map the journey, the current customer journey, and find out where the pain is. And out of that, then the third thing I'd do would be to actually say, well, what are the highest priority issues that we need to focus on? And then I would allocate those all into 3 groups or buckets. Or actually, I'll use a pyramid. And the bottom would be, what are the basics that we need to do brilliantly? Let's cover those off. And then the second bucket I get to is, what are the performers, the things that will differentiate us? And the last thing I get to would be, what would be the delighters? So that's the fourth thing. And the last thing I do, or the fifth thing I do, would be to go, how do I scale this across the organization? It's not important just for my customer experience team or the insights team to have this information. We want everybody to have the information. So how do we create stories and communicate in a way that land with a bucket load of other people in the organization, so they can empathize with customers more deeply? And when you empathize and really connect with what's going on with your customers, you make better decisions. And that quite often is the missing piece, especially like large organizations like telcos. They've got all the stats. They've got like 67% of people think this or that, or 47% of people are happy, or conversion rates, all that type of stuff. What they're missing is the context around why. So what's going on? So why do they act the way they do? They should be converting. We're giving them everything they've asked for, but they're not converting. So why aren't they converting? Understanding that context answers the question. So you've got certainty around, what you do next, rather than wonder.
Oh my God, this is so good. I love the pyramid, analogy that you gave. I was immediately able to imagine. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense.
Well,
Amazing.
and I think what we see a lot is that people talk about delighting the customer, and we're not against delighting the customer, but I also don't think it's the first place you want to start, because you know yourself. The biggest issues you have, and let's talk about telcos, the biggest issues they have is, can I tell you a story? But it relates to another telco, large telco we work with here in Australia. They had an app, and every telco has an app. And they wanted to accelerate the amount of multimedia that they were putting through this app. And so you could watch soccer, and you could watch all types of sports, and it was very exciting, and they'd sign all these multimedia deals and stuff. Nobody was engaging with it. Hardly anybody was using the app. And they were going, why? Like, we're giving them so much value. What's wrong with them? What they were doing is they were focusing on the delighters. The main reason, when we went and did the research and we talked to customers, what do you want to use the app for? I want to find out how much data I've used, and I want to pay a bill. And the 2 biggest things they couldn't do? They couldn't get their data easily, and they couldn't find or pay their bill. And so that's what they wanted to use the app for. They didn't want to use it to watch some great sporting event. That's what they wanted to do. That was the brilliant basic. Get that stuff done first. Once you get that sorted, then you can get to the delighters. But too often people start with this delight. We've got to delight the customer. No, don't delight the customer yet. Do the things that you've promised that you're going to do, do them brilliantly. And too few organizations do that.
I'm a sucker for stories. This story is amazing, and that you're giving a real life example of the companies that you worked with makes it even more better. I'm gonna come to the next part, which I think is very impressive. When I introduced you, is you said something really, really important, right? And that is like uh, promises we make versus promises we keep.
Yeah, I think we've coined the phrase brand is the promise you make,
Yeah,
customer experience is the promise you keep.
love it.
And this is about integrity. So the other thing we see is CEOs, organizations espousing or making proclamations of what their companies stand for. And it's an awesome thing. As a leader, you of course you should do that. And you need that North Star for the organization and the individuals in it to follow. But it's very easy to make those promises. It's a lot harder to actually keep them. And so if you say we're customer centric, and we work with organizations, and one of their values is customer centricity, we obsess about the customer. And that's great. I'm like, as a customer experience company, that warms the cockles of our hearts. That's awesome. But the next question you've got to ask is, okay, if one of your values, your company, 5 company values is we obsess about the customer, show me how you're, and not pointing fingers at anybody, but prove it. Show me where you're obsessing about the customer. So when you're talking about billing, show me how you obsess about the customer. When you were talking about support, when you say you'll get back to people, show me you're obsessing about the customer because, and I can go on, but you know yourself, and let's say we're talking about telcos, they'll put you into that chat sequence. And invariably, that's woeful. Like it's just an awful experience. You get people who really can't help you. You spend 10 or 15 minutes online and you never get an answer. And then they just bump you off and say, well, I can't answer this. I'll send you to the person who'll contact you and you'll get a response 2 days later. Now, that same company may have a principle saying we obsess about the customer. Well, that doesn't ring true for me. Like you can't say that and then put me into a 15-minute chat where I don't get an answer, I get frustrated, and you're wasting my time. And what we're about is trying to align the congruence of I say one thing. When I say that thing, do I actually deliver against it? Or am I just saying it and hoping I'm going to get there? And I don't think anybody's doing anything malicious. This is not ill intentioned. It's just a little bit harder than everybody thinks. And it needs a little bit more design and behind the scenes effort to actually deliver the promise that you're making. And there's lots of people in organizations who are responsible for making promises. But I also ask, and anybody listening to this thing, look around the organization and go, how many people have we actually got keeping promises versus making promises? And that can be a stark reminder sometimes that maybe we need to look at life a little bit differently.
Yeah. Can you say that quote one more time, please?
Brand is the promise you make. Customer experience is the promise you keep.
Ask that. This is going to be the title of the video. And this is something I'm going to start the whole thing with because it's so true. And especially coming from someone who's done this for, a couple of decades is absolutely amazing.
Well, I've got a very good friend called Mark Stickdorn, who is one of the doyens of service design. He's based in Germany, and he's come out here to work with us a few times. And very, very smart man. And he does use it a lot, but he always references me, which is very nice. He goes, the guy who says this is Damian Kernahan. So more than happy for you to use it because we believe it to be true, and we believe it. That's the sort of the promise that we make our customers that we can help you actually deliver against your promises because isn't that what you want anyway?
Yeah, absolutely. If I was a customer of some company that I want to buy products from, I just hope that they kept the promise. So it becomes the core value of that company and the trust that you build in them.
Correct. And that's what, when we see advertising, when you go to websites and they make all these claims, that's what we're buying into. And then we pay our money every month. And that's what we're expecting. I'll give a shout out to Slack in this regard. A few years ago, as we downsized, there was a downturn in the market. We had our people left, and we had 5 or 6 extra licenses for Slack, which we weren't using. They emailed us and said, listen, we've noticed over the last 6 weeks or so that you've bought 10 licenses or 15 licenses and you've only got 10. Like, do you want us to what we're going to do if we don't hear back from you, is we're just going to reduce it down to 10 and reduce the payment you're making to us automatically. If we've got this wrong, please let us know and we'll reinstate you to 15, but it just doesn't look like you're using them, and we want you to make sure you maximize the value with Slack. I've always remembered it, and I always tell the story. That is a brand that's congruent with their promise. Like, they are customer obsessed because they're helping you extract the maximum value out of the service that you're paying for. And I think, isn't that what we all deserve?
Absolutely. Wow, that's a great example. And Damien, you're an amazing storyteller. Every time you tell a
Huh.
story, I'm just like, oh yeah, wow. So cool, Damien.
I got, I got hundreds. We've been doing this for
Let's
a
do
long time.
99 today and leave one for the next episode.
Yeah, for sure. Happy to.
Yeah, that's the next part that is piggybacking on what you discussed already. Like, you talked about the importance of keeping the promise. And my next question comes down to, how can you focus on customers' value? Like, why is it important with regards to customer experience?
Yeah. So I put a post out on this the other day, or something around this, and that was, and I got a quote or reference Bob Moesta, who's actually one of the father of jobs to be done theory. So JTBD, for those who are familiar with it. If not, Google it. It's a fascinating way to actually really understand your customers, and been really helpful in helping us provide real value to the organizations that we work with. But he talked about, people talk about product market fit. Okay, so product market fit is a well-known term, especially in the technology and startup world right now. And he said, I think people have it around the wrong way. It actually should be market product fit. And you think about that and go, what does he mean by that? Well, let's step back a bit. If you go back 20 or 30 years, most of our GDP, our gross domestic product for each of these first world countries, was product based. So here's a mouse, that's a product. Here's a glass, that's a product. Over 70 to 75% of the gross domestic product, or the economy, for companies like all across Europe, UK, America, Australia, etc., are now service based. So let that sit with you for a moment. We used to create, manufacturing used to be much bigger. We created products. Take years to develop the product. We had to get it right. So when a product came out of a factory, it had to work. Because I'll ask you the question: what happens when you ship a malfunctioning product? What happens to it?
Well, there's a return.
Correct. What happens? So you have to send another one.
Yeah.
So you've spent money and you have to do it. So there's a wasted thing there.
Yeah.
That's not the same with services. You can ship malfunctioning services every single day of the week. And guess what? Most organizations do. So let's do a story. So if I'm an insurance company, or I can do telcos if you like. Which
Yeah.
one?
Telco. Let's go telco.
Let's go telco. So if you're a telco, you can say, listen, we sell, where's my phone? We sell mobile phones. We're really, really, really good at doing that. We know how to do that. And that's a form of connectivity and consumption. So let's launch media services. So sport, NFL, tennis, soccer, Premier League, whatever, name what you like. But we should get into that business. Well, just because you're good at selling a mobile phone and the services doesn't mean that you're an expert in multimedia delivery and what people want from that. Because what you want out of a phone is different than what you want out of a device, an audio visual device. And so, but what happens is they go, well, we've got the channel, we've got the brand, we've got the channel to market, we've got the network, we've signed the deals, and we've got the delivery mechanism for the phones and iPads. We're all good. And so what they do is they go to market, they launch. But what invariably hasn't happened is they haven't thought through the end-to-end journey and the drivers of what customers actually want out of an audiovisual. What are the jobs that they want out of audiovisual versus how do they want out of connectivity out of a phone? And so they just launch, but they haven't intentionally designed the experience, the value exchanges that should happen all along the way. And as a result, people sign up and probably drop out, stop engaging, and go, I'm not going to pay for that anymore. And you can apply that to all your Netflixes and all those Primes and Amazons. They're pretty big, and I'm sure they've done much more work, but it's not just about the content. We've not that we've just signed the content deals and we've got great content. That's the product. The product is the content. What sits around it is the service experience. And that is what people quite often don't spend the time in engineering doing. And that's why people ship malfunctioning services all the time, which is why people complain, because it's a malfunctioning service. Whereas if this glass I buy it and it's got a crack in it, I just take it back and I get a new one. But it's designed, all these things are designed to work thousands and thousands of times. People don't design service experiences to work thousands and thousands of times without returns.
Wow.
And that's what we work with organizations to do. How do you build a service as robust as a product? It's because it deserves to be.
Wow. This is really amazing. And yeah, I just love this whole podcast because I'm learning a lot, a lot. And the terminologies,
I'm enjoying
yeah, the
I'm
terminologies
enjoying the chat.
used are like amazing. I'm like, ooh, this is something, it should be on a book or on a quote on some, Pinterest. So these are amazing.
I think I've got a book in me yet, but I'll have to take some time out to do it one day.
Oh, and you can come here for the launch of your book as well. We'll be happy to host you.
I love it. Love to.
All right, here. This is my favorite part and all our audience's favorite part. So, you are a well-established CEO, managing people, and you've learned a lot in your, decades and decades of experience. But
Sure.
what are the common mistakes that you have made in your decades and decades of journey that you don't want the future CEOs to make? If you could give, a 4 or 5 examples, that'd be amazing.
I thought it was the mistakes I see CEOs of large organizations make and how to avoid them.
Yes,
Um,
both.
oh, I'll start with that. If we have time, we can get to me.
Absolutely.
I've made too many.
Absolutely.
This can be my confessional. I think I've touched on it, but for CEOs, they've got a lot of moving pieces in their business and a service. If you think about service businesses, and telcos are service businesses, they're not product businesses. There's a lot of moving pieces. And I think we believe that people are naturally good and people naturally want to do the right thing. But what I see them underestimating is the effort required to actually deliver that promise that they're making in the annual report, and to their people. I see them underestimating the amount of effort that it actually requires to do that well. And so I think there's a lot of work that has to take place behind the scenes to deliver exceptional experiences. And if you think about exceptional experiences like Cirque du Soleil, and I think Apple have provided exceptional experiences, although I think sometimes it's a bit challenging, but they think about it. And so I and it's not a selfish thing, because I want them to fulfill their potential. They want to grow, they want to make impact in the world, and they're grappling with why aren't we getting to where we should be in the time that we plan to. And for us to see that is frustrating because we can see into them and we can see what's not going right. And so my call out to CEOs would be the X return, the 10X or 20X or 30X return you get on intentionally designing the back end to deliver those experiences for your customers so they stay longer, spend more, buy additional products, tell other people. Those things will pay back your organization 20 times, 30 times. And every time I see a CEO commit and be congruent with, I'm saying this thing and we're going to put in the effort to actually deliver it, we see them get the financial and commercial return, which is what it's all about. And we don't do customer experience because we just think that's a wonderful thing to do. It is a means to an end, and it has to deliver commercially for organizations. So that's what we're about.
Love it. So this is something that you see, people commonly make as CEOs. If there's one thing that you personally would want to advise who want to become a CEOs, apart from customer experience, would you say something else?
Yeah, absolutely. I think early in our career or our business cycle, and we've been going for 15 years now, I was far too focused on the product. And I think I spent far too long trying to make the product exceptional. And I'm talking as a business owner now. And I think our product is exceptional, but it was probably really, really good a long time ago. And I think if I had my time again, I would have flicked into sales, focus on sales so much earlier because it solves a lot of ills. So, we all go through economic cycles and ups and downs, but sales solves and revenue solves a lot of problems. So I think I would have moved into a greater focus on selling more than I was like making our product exceptional and fixing it that way. So that's my key learning.
Oh, that's a great tip because as you said, I know some of the CEOs who are focusing so much on their baby, which is the product, and not focusing on the sales team and how to grow the sales team and make sure that they achieve their target or exceed their target. And when something really bad happens, that is when they're like, oh my God, we need to focus on this, right? So I
Yeah.
completely
Yeah.
agree with you, and I understand what
Yeah.
CEOs go through this. When it comes to thinking of their product as the first baby and sales is something which comes along later. So, Damien, we have come to the end of the podcast, and I just want to say it's been a pleasure to have you in our podcast. And I love,
Great talking to you.
thank you so much, Damien. And I loved all the stories that you said because stories is the only way to capture attention of the people in a chaotic social media world. And you're a great storyteller. Thank you so much,
Listen,
Damien.
thanks, Danny. Really appreciate you having me on, and I've really enjoyed sharing some of my experiences with you.
Love it. And to our viewers, if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. For more in depth discussions on digital customer experience, drop us a comment below with your thoughts or any questions that you might have for Damien or future guests. Okay, until next time, stay curious and keep innovating. This is Danny here.